Last time I talked about Demon Slayer, I said I was gonna read the manga, because there's no way in hell I'm waiting years for Ufurubo's final two movies. Well, I did it. I finished the whole thing. And now that I have, I've got a lot to say. So let's talk about it. I read the manga from the very start of the Infinity Castle arc and I was planning on taking my time with my reading experience, but I ended up not only finishing the rest of the Infinity Castle arc, but also the Sunrise Countdown arc, which is the very last arc of the series. I finished the Demon Slayer manga in one sitting, which honestly already shows how much I enjoyed my time reading the final stretch of the series. To kick things off, my Shinobu theory was 100% spot on, which I'm happy about, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. Kanao versus Douma was how the movie set things up, but the last thing I had in my mind was Inosuke being part of this fight. But god, I am so damn glad he was, because truly, aside from Shinobu's plan and Kanao putting the effort to avenge her, Inosuke was such an incredible highlight and an overall wild card. Honest to god, I was losing my entire mind seeing that Douma ate Inosuke's mother when he was a mere baby. The stakes from avenging Shinobu were now raised to also a son wanting to avenge his mother, which completely hit me right in the feels. If you've seen my Naruto video, then you know why things like this just hit me emotionally. Kanao's interactions with Douma at the beginning were also a bit hilarious, and she pretty much kept the same exact energy that Shinobu had with Douma, if not even edgier. The fight itself was pretty good. I found myself really engaged, and the intensity in comparison to Shinobu versus Douma was much higher. I want to touch on the art of the manga for a brief second. As someone who transitioned between the incredible adaptation of Ufotable to the manga by Koyoharu Gotoge, I would be a liar if I said it didn't take me a while to get used to it, but after reading through both Swordsmith Village arc and also Hashira Training arc, I found the art style charming and had its own identity, which I can imagine was one of the key factors that gave Demon Slayer the chance to be picked up by Studio Ufotable in the first place. With that, this fight felt like a breeze to go through, not only because of the build up from the fight with Shinobu, but also with how Inosuke, being as chaotic as he is, now also being the angriest he's ever been, trying to get revenge on his mother's killer. It was a thrilling fight, but the moment Douma's face starts melting is when things start getting even crazier. Seeing Shinobu's face on the page had me laughing maniacally. I am so glad Shinobu's death and her getting absorbed by Douma was used this way in order to bring Douma down immensely. But not only that, we see that the plan from the get-go was Shinobu be eaten by Douma because of his obsession for eating women, which early on Douma tells Kanao that Akaza never really eat women despite being more beneficial to demons to eat, which Shinobu, having Wisteria flower poison in her body, makes her the best sacrificial pawn in order to give Kanao a chance to kill Douma. I'm going to elaborate more on this later, but I am extremely satisfied that Shinobu not only went out defiantly against Douma, but also how much of a strategist she gets portrayed to be from this point forward. The theme of vengeance and passing down rage for retribution gets showcased with the teamwork of Kanao and Inosuke, which made the conclusion to the fight extremely satisfying for me, as Kanao, with the help of Inosuke, manages to decapitate an upper moon that is second rank, which is crazy to even say out loud, but Shinobu's sacrifice really set them up for success. Then we see the pure shit talk from Shinobu towards Douma, even in the afterlife, which I know is meant to be a huge holy shit moment, but I couldn't help but laugh my ass off at this, especially when Douma even has the nerve to say he is in love with her. Like, this is the same guy that killed her sister. Is bro actually dead ass? This shit was absolutely unhinged, but the bow to this was tied beautifully as Shinobu tells Douma she'll go to hell after him. Overall, I absolutely enjoyed this fight and felt like the missing piece for Shinobu versus Douma earlier on in this arc that was very much needed. The next fight, holy shit, man. In my review of the Infinity Castle movie, I said that I didn't know what fight could possibly beat Tanjiro and Giyu versus Akaza for me. This fight has indeed done it. A true 1v4, the likes of which I've never thought Demon Slayer would deliver. Kokushibo versus Muichiro, Genya, Sadami, and Gyome. The best compliment I can give this fight is that I'm extremely upset that I read it, because I can only imagine how incredible this fight will be on the big screen when the second movie comes. The moment this fight starts, it genuinely does not stop. The brutality, the gore, the sheer ruthlessness of it all, this fight is without debate the best fight in the entirety of Demon Slayer for me. Not that I don't love or appreciate the final fight of the series, but this fight really just was otherworldly of just insanity that I just appreciate a lot more. Before even the first strike or blow happens, Kokushibo reveals his name, which is Michikatsu Sugikuni, and then he proceeds to say that he is Muichiro's ancestor. So already, Koyoru Gotoge loads Kokushibo as a character with so much lore, making the anticipation for his backstory even higher than it was before. Of course, this man gets showcased as a true rank 1 upper moon as he cuts Muichiro's arm like absolute butter. He pins this 14-year-old on a pillar and says he wants to make him into a demon. How the hell the fight just started and a Hashira is already in critical condition, bruh? Genya tries to sneak him and then he becomes a limbless sack of meat. Bro, how do you fight this man? This is where Sanemi, the Wind Hashira, comes in to protect / save his brother. One of my gripes with Demon Slayer is how Sanemi comes across in Hashira training arc with his brother the moment he hears that he can eat demons. I understand the trauma from their past as survivors of their mom becoming a demon, but Gotoge didn't leave much for Sanemi to introspect on how much he actually cared for his brother until this moment where he actually goes, I actually care deeply about you the whole time, which I am not necessarily upset by much until you remember the arc prior where he was ready to gouge his own brother's eyes out and beat him out of the Demon Slayer corpse instead of, I don't know, just talking to him. Like, be for real, man. I still feel the impact of the older brother dynamic, but Gotoge could have handled that better in my opinion. Besides that, Sanemi in this fight was like a rabid dog ready to throw down against Kokushibo's moon breathing, which was cool to see after not being present in any huge fight like this. Then Guillaume arrives, perfectly contrasting Sanemi personality-wise, and felt like a huge shift in the battle once he entered it. This man was an absolute tank, and honestly, I don't know if much success would have been had if someone like Guillaume wasn't there. The most important scene here is how after Kokushibo reveals the drawback of the mark, which is a lifespan shortened to 25 years, Guillaume immediately not only shuts him down with pure resolve, he completely reads Kokushibo like a book and mentions that a Demon Slayer has beat the mark with a longer life. This was such a phenomenal moment because this is where we see the cracks of insecurity from someone like Kokushibo who looked relatively impenetrable at this point in time. The fight was such a breeze to read through, no pun intended, as the physicality after both Guillaume and Sanemi get the mark becomes more intense, which at first seems like they're finally getting the upper hand, and then you see actually nah, you just shredded my kimono, and he reveals his full sword. I fucking lost it. This is when I realized reading the manga was low-key a mistake, not because this was bad, but because I can only imagine how mind-blowing this would have been to experience in the movie theater when the second movie drops. The fight reaches its final stage as an armless Muichiro saves Sanemi, and Genya in the background consumes Kokushibo's hair and part of his sword to set him up for a full-blown assault by the Hashira. Kokushibo being put into a corner is where we see his backstory as he's revealed to be Yorichi's brother. This for me is without question the best backstory in the entirety of Demon Slayer, as it manages to completely characterize Kokushibo and his hatred for Yorichi because of their very disjointed upbringing, but also have Yorichi be a full representation of the themes of humanity and what it means to be the strongest alongside leaving a legacy behind. The irony present here is heartbreaking. Michikatsu's hatred for his brother and his desperate wish to be like him made him abandon his wife, his children, and even his humanity once Muzan tempted him with the promise of a longer life to pursue greater strength as a swordsman. And most cruelly, the idea of leaving behind a legacy, the very lesson Yorichi once told him as a human, ultimately came back to haunt him as a demon, with the demon slayers being the physical representation of that. Kokushibo's demise is easily one of the best moments I've seen in a battle shonen period. Impressive doesn't even begin to cover how Gotoge not only made me care about a character who had very little presence before the Upper Moon meeting, but also gave him a backstory that hit hard and not only fleshed out Kokushibo himself, but also deepened our understanding of Jorichi, the strength he carried both mentally and physically as one of the greatest demon slayers to ever live. What makes this fight in Kokushibo's demise hit even harder is that both Moichiro and Genya meet their end. Both deaths are heartbreaking in their own way, and the theme of siblings connecting in death is prominent as Juichiro is saddened that his brother is not with him in the afterlife at the age of 14, and Sanemi, after Genja's parting words, sees his brother crumble just like a demon in his arms. The consequences of battling a rank 1 upper moon is 100% felt. In Guillaume's words to Sanemi, it's not over until Muzan is defeated, just adds to the tragedy of this battle. I can only imagine how impactful this entire portion is going to be once we get this on the big screen thanks to Ufotable. This was on a completely different level, and I understand now when you guys said that this fight truly was going to change my mind fucking quickly about Giyu and Tanjiro versus Akaza. God damn, dude.
You pathetic Hashira think you can beat me? Not if I have anything to say about it, Muzan Kibuchi.
With the upper moons being killed by the demon slayers, Muzan's awakening is easily one of the most terrifying things I've read in recent memory. With how much Muzan has been hyped up throughout the series as this absolutely menacing figure that can completely destroy anyone with a snap of a finger, the way in which he absolutely obliterates so many slayers in the castle made me genuinely horrified, especially right when things seemed like they were a bit more hopeful after Kokushibo's defeat. How would Tanjiro and the rest of the cast be able to take down this absolute monster? This is where the Infinity Castle arc technically ends and the Sunrise Countdown arc begins. Admittedly, I came into reading Demon Slayer with a lot of doubt and skepticism. Of course, I stayed relatively off the grid when it came to Demon Slayer manga discussions as an anime only, but the only vague things I've heard about the conclusion of the series is how quote-unquote bad and disappointing it is. With that, as much as I enjoyed Infinity Castle and the arc pretty much delivering on every necessary aspect for me, the moment I reached this point is where I told myself, here we go. This is where people say things go downhill, pretty much actively preparing myself for a letdown. However, Sunrise Countdown, just like Infinity Castle, delivered. Not only did it deliver an incredibly thrilling climax, it also delivered one of the most satisfying thematic conclusions I've seen for a battle shonen. Which makes me ask the question, why were people so mad about it again? I know I'm probably getting certain people mad in the comment section going, how could you possibly enjoy this mid-ass series? This garbage doesn't even come close to my favorite manga that more than likely it's also marketed for teenagers. Like, okay dog, I know that people have genuine criticisms of this final stretch of the series, and this video most definitely isn't a persuasive video on why you should think this series is a masterpiece. Shit, I don't think that either. But most problems people might have had with this final arc didn't bother me. If anything, I will be hard pressed to tell you what I didn't like from this arc. That's how much I enjoyed it. Extremely hot take straight out of the oven here. I enjoyed Sunrise Countdown more than I did Shinjuku Showdown post Gojo vs Sukuna. Now I know that probably sounds insane, but you gotta remember what you've been staring at for the entire video. Fourth wall break here, my avatar was inspired by fucking Yuta Okotsu from popular series Jujutsu Kaisen by Gege Akutami. So when I say that I enjoy Demon Slayer's final arc more than JJK, I'm not trying to be dramatic for the sake of the video, I genuinely feel that way. From the moment the fight between the Demon Slayers and Muzan began to the conclusion of the fight, I truly was unable to unglue myself from reading this manga. Dude, the last thing I had on my bingo card was that shortly after everyone is brought out of the Infinity Castle, fucking Tanjiro would be incapacitated because of the wound Muzan gave him that causes self-destruction. Removing Tanjiro out of the fight and waving the obvious fake death flag was a bold move, but the moment I saw Nezuko waking up and going towards the battlefield was when I realized Gotoji is about to use every single pawn to their disposal for this final stretch of the series. The Hashira fight Muzan with all of their might, and like I said, Muzan truly gets portrayed as a chaotic monster. Tanjiro ends up getting an inherited memory, the same exact one in the Swordsmith Village arc with Jorichi, and the tragedy of him being the strongest, while at the same time unable to take down Muzan out of unfortunate circumstances, truly hit hard for me. The loss of his pregnant wife Yuta, being banished from the Demon Slayer Corps after Michikazu turning into a demon and letting a younger Tamayo escape, everything about Jorichi just screams tragedy. But despite the life that could have been, he carved the path for the Demon Slayers to accomplish what he so deeply regrets not doing, and that is taking down Muzan. This was a very brief backstory from Jorichi's perspective, but truly drives home one of the main themes in Demon Slayer, and that is inheritance. Whether it is inheriting breathing techniques in order to take down a threat that has lived for centuries, or inheriting trauma from the loss of loved ones, Jorichi's tragic life and his failure of taking down Muzan despite his strength led to generations of people inheriting potential death and loss. But because of his nature to rely on the future, he gave them the tools needed in order to fight. This was extremely effective in my opinion because it served as a reminder everything that has happened since Jorichi came into the picture led the current Demon Slayer Corp and the Hashira to this fight against the clock with Muzan. But not only that, the Kamado family, because of his generosity, decided to pass down the earrings and sun breathing to the future generations. Muzan takes down everyone, including Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Kanao, who try to help the Hashira. Then Tanjiro finally comes into the fold, saving Kanao, and the moment I saw the panel of Tanjiro's face as Muzan calls him awful looking honestly gave me fucking chills down my spine. Muzan looks at Tanjiro and immediately gets reminded of Jorichi. This fight truly was mostly everything that I was hoping for. It was climatic, it felt dangerous, the counting down until sunrise, everything just felt so right, and a love letter to Battle Shonen prior to Demon Slayer. The MVPs of this final fight being Shinobu and Tamayo, them planning out 4 poisons for Muzan designed in a way that took him too long to realize what was happening until he was already against the clock, was such a satisfying reveal, as both of the roles in this final battle wasn't necessarily in the battlefield but in the preparation to take him down, just like Kaguya. Nezuko getting her memories and also seeing glimpses of the journey Tanjiro has been on was very heartfelt and emotional. Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Zenitsu also end up working together, which brought that sense of nostalgia and progression between the three of them, even if it was a bit too brief. The last moments of Muzan, which many people hated, was the moment after Tanjiro, with the help of everyone, pins him against the wall as he ends up turning into a baby. Now, I can understand how something like this could be deemed as goofy to a lot of people, but to me, I felt it was not only fitting, but also symbolic. The idea that a guy like Muzan, who not only was extremely selfish and treated his subordinates like disposable trash, including the doctor that gave him the medicine that turned him into a demon in the fucking first place, ends up turning into a mere infant who needs help from his parents to live, is beautifully twisted irony. Muzan crawling, trying desperately to avoid the sun, the concept of death staring at him, as we see tears falling out of his eyes, seeing how pathetic he truly is. Not only does it work for the story of Demon Slayer, I quite frankly don't see Gotoge writing Muzan going out in any other way. The defeat of Muzan is bittersweet as we see a bunch of deaths from the immense battle. Guillaume has an incredibly satisfying closure. Obanai and Mitsuri declare that they will be together in the next life, which ties a bow to both of their characters. And then we get a look at Tanjiro, who is armless and has no pulse. Giyu completely broken at the sight, feeling guilty once again for escaping death, just like with Sabito at the final selection. Nezuko arrives at the scene when everything has come to an end, while Giyu keeps saying sorry towards her. Muzan, however, in a last-ditch effort, decides to make Tanjiro inherit his will of destroying the Demon Slayers by turning him into a demon. I completely lost my mind at this point. Truly, I can't put into words how incredibly bold this move was by Gotoge, but one that made made so much sense thematically. Like I mentioned earlier, inheritance is one of the prominent themes throughout Demon Slayer, but I failed to mention the other side of the coin when I talked about inheritance, and that's the demon side of things. Douma inherited his twisted belief system thanks to the eternal paradise faith since he was a kid, Kokushibo and his hatred for his brother Yoriichi, which lasted all the way until his very death. Muzan used their circumstances and injected his will in order to make them demons. So why would Muzan not try to make Tanjiro inherit his will right as he's close to reaching death? Especially when Nezuko in Swordsmith Village arc managed to beat the sun, who's his sister. It was a fucking brilliant move by Muzan, and it truly drives home the point that inheritance is something that we all go through at some point of our lives, but what matters is how we deal with what we inherit as people. This is why, despite how the situation truly felt hopeless, as everyone who could barely if at all bring themselves to harm a demon Tanjiro, we see him fight the urge to eat a clinging Nezuko. Muzan internally tempting Tanjiro the same exact way he has done to countless people, and yet Tanjiro, simply put, was done fighting. He didn't want eternal life, he just wanted to finally live a life that, even if it wasn't perfect because of his family's demise, be able to live with his sister after everything they've been through, after all the sacrifices that were done in order to get them here. Thanks to Kanao injecting him with the medicine made by Tamayo, Tanjiro is figuratively and literally pushed and pulled to the side of humanity, finally putting an end to Muzan. Demon Slayer comes to an end as the Demon Slayer Corps finally disband, with Sanemi and Giyu being the remaining Hashira alive from the battle. Tanjiro, Nezuko, Zenitsu, and Inosuke go back to the Kamado house and live the rest of their lives in peaceful days. The final chapter was a bit of a shock to me, as basically we go into a current day setting and we see reincarnations alongside pairing confirmations in a cheesy but still very heartwarming way, as we see the future generation getting to live their lives just like us. With everything about Demon Slayer on the table, to say that I heavily enjoyed it would be a humongous understatement at this point in time. I didn't have it in my bingo card for this year that I would become such a Demon Slayer enjoyer, let alone script over 4,000 words for a script and make a video this long talking about it. In a sea of videos that seem very dismissive of Demon Slayer and what Koyoharu Gotoge tries to accomplish with this manga, I wanted to make a video that fully expresses my thoughts as someone who once doubted this series, and now someone who not only appreciates this series by its own merits outside of any manga sales or movie box office talks, but also wishes to see what Koyoharu Gotoge will do next as a mangaka. If they decide to just leave the industry with a series like Demon Slayer, then what a fucking way to enter and cause one of the biggest impacts on the medium and then step right out. They will forever have my absolute praise and respect for that. With all of that being said though, I want to know what you guys think of Demon Slayer as a story. Did you love the series? Did you like it? Or do you downright despise it? I don't know how you managed to make it this far in the video if you do, but leave your comments in the comment section down below. I am definitely curious on what you guys will have to say on the matter. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more videos from yours truly, hitting the like and subscribing to the channel with the bell is the way to go. Please help a college student out who is extremely broke. I would really appreciate it. And with that, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are. See you guys in the next one.